The envelope was already on the table when Harlow Voss walked into the conference room. She had not been invited. That was the point. Harlow Voss, 37-year-old wife of Beckett Wyndham, stood in the doorway of the 32nd floor boardroom at the Aldenmore Group's downtown Chicago headquarters, holding a cup of coffee she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. The room smelled like leather and ambition. Every seat was taken. 12 men in dark suits, 3 women with the careful posture of people who had learned to take up exactly the right amount of space. And at the far end of the table, her father-in-law, Gerald Wyndham, 68, founder and chairman of Wyndham Capital Partners, laughing at something the man beside him had said. Gerald hadn't noticed her yet. Beckett had. His face did something complicated, a flicker of panic that he immediately smoothed into blankness. He was good at that. 39 years old, handsome in the way that photographs well, the kind of man who filled a suit like it was tailored for him specifically, because it was. Beckett Wyndham, senior vice president of business development at his father's firm, a man who had been handed everything and had the particular confidence of someone who had never once examined where it came from. He gave her a small, tight smile, the kind that said, "Not now," the kind that said, "This isn't your room." Harlow looked at him for a long moment. Then she pulled out the chair at the nearest end of the table, sat down, and set her coffee in front of her. Gerald looked up. The laugh died somewhere in the middle of his chest. Harlow. His voice was neutral in the way that very controlled men go neutral when they are deciding how to be angry without appearing to be. "I didn't realize you were coming in today. I wasn't planning to," she said. Something came up. She wasn't wrong about that. She had met Beckett Wyndham at a fundraising dinner 6 years ago. She'd been there representing Aldenmore, not as a guest, not as a date someone brought, but as the principal. The company was hers. She had built it from a single commercial property investment she'd made at 26 with money she'd saved working 2 jobs through graduate school, and by the time she was 33, Aldenmore Group managed a real estate portfolio valued at just over $2.4 billion. She had not told Beckett this on the first date, or the second, or the 5th. She told herself it was because she wanted to be seen as a person. That was true, partly. But the fuller truth was this. She had dated men who knew what she was worth before they knew her middle name, and she knew what that felt like, and she had decided she would never do it again. So when Beckett Wyndham asked her what she did, she told him she worked in real estate. When he asked if she liked it, she said she did. When he asked if she was good at it, she smiled and said she was getting there. He told her later that he found her refreshingly humble. She had not corrected him. The wedding was small. Her preference, not his family's. Gerald Wyndham had wanted something grander, something that matched the Wyndham name, but Harlow had a way of making decisions that felt like conversations even when they weren't, and by the end of the planning she had exactly the wedding she wanted. 200 guests, late September, a restored 1920s venue on the lakefront. Flowers she'd chosen herself. No ice sculpture. She and Beckett moved into a house she owned in Lincoln Park. She told him the house was from a previous investment. He nodded and said something about good timing in the market. She agreed. For the first year it was easy. For the second year, it was fine. The third year was when she started noticing the way he answered the phone when he didn't know she was listening. Not anything obvious, nothing so clear-cut as a name she didn't recognize, or a voice she could hear through the speaker. Just the way his posture changed. The way he would angle his back toward her just a few degrees. The way he would stop mid-law when he walked back into a room and found her there, and take a breath and then continue. The laugh slightly delayed, slightly adjusted, like a song starting 2 beats off. She had been a quiet child, an observer. Her mother used to say that Harlow noticed things other people decided not to notice. She grew up understanding that to be quiet was not the same as to be unaware. She was very, very aware. The first thing she confirmed was the hotel, the Mercer on Michigan Avenue, a charge on a credit card she wasn't supposed to know existed. She only knew because Beckett had once handed her the wrong card at dinner, laughed it off, but she had already seen the last 4 digits, and she was the kind of woman who remembered numbers. She'd asked a friend who worked in financial compliance, not officially, just a conversation over dinner, and the account had been in Beckett's name for almost 2 years. 14 months of room charges at the Mercer, twice a month, sometimes once, 3 times in a single week. She did not cry when she found out. She did something more useful. She called her attorney. His name was Rafferty Cole, 51, a man who had spent 23 years in family law and had the specific worn-in patience of someone who had heard every version of this story and was not surprised by any of them. He listened. He took notes. He asked 3 questions and then said, "Give me 2 weeks." She gave him 3. What Rafferty came back with was a file, 41 pages. The hotel records, timestamps, photographs taken by a licensed investigator. Nothing invasive, Nothing she would be ashamed of later. A name. Photographs of the name's face. The name was Tory Vance, 31, a junior associate at a public relations firm that happened to hold a contract with Wyndham Capital Partners. Beckett had met her at a company retreat 18 months ago. Harlow read the file once, slowly, and then set it in the drawer of her desk and locked it. She did not say anything to Beckett. She was not ready. She needed to think about the geometry of this, what she was going to do, and in what order, and what she was willing to lose, and what she was not. And she needed to do that thinking without him knowing she was doing it. This was something she was also very good at. The event was Gerald Wyndham's idea. Every year, Wyndham Capital hosted what Gerald called the Horizon Dinner, a formal gathering of their top investors, key partners, and, in Gerald's words, the people in this city who are building something worth watching. It was held in the private ballroom of the Aldenmore Tower Hotel, a 42-story building on the Chicago River that happened to be one of the flagship properties in the Aldenmore Group's portfolio. Harlow had owned it for 4 years. Gerald had been holding the Horizon Dinner there for 3. He did not know these two facts were related. He had told Beckett, more than once, that the Aldenmore Tower was the finest event venue in the city. The management was impeccable. The service was something you couldn't manufacture, and whoever owned that building knew exactly what they were doing. Gerald Wyndham did not often give compliments. He gave this one freely, enthusiastically, to anyone who would listen. Once, at a Sunday dinner, he had turned to Harlow and said, not unkindly, in the way of someone who genuinely did not think they were condescending, "You should look into that building, the Aldenmore Tower. That's the kind of property that's worth understanding. Real craftsmanship in management. Whoever runs that operation is someone to admire." Harlow had looked at her plate, and then at her wine glass, and then at Gerald. "I've heard good things about it," she said, and that was all. The week before the Horizon Dinner, Beckett came home late 3 nights in a row. On the 3rd night, Harlow was still awake when he came in. She was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of water and her laptop running through quarterly projections, and she watched him come through the door with the particular looseness of a man who had spent the evening somewhere comfortable. "Long day," she said. "Investor calls," he said. "You know how it gets before the dinner." "I do," she said. He kissed her on the cheek. She didn't move. He went upstairs. She sat there for a while after the light in the bedroom went out. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, the city was doing what cities do, moving, humming, indifferent to whatever was happening inside any particular window. She opened a new document. She typed for 40 minutes. When she was done, she had outlined everything she was going to do, in order, with dates attached to each step. She saved the document in a folder she'd encrypted 2 months ago. She closed the laptop. She finished her water. Then she went upstairs and got into bed beside her husband and fell asleep in 11 minutes, which was about normal for her. The Horizon Dinner was on a Thursday. The ballroom on the 42nd floor of the Aldenmore Tower could seat 320 guests and had, on this particular evening, been arranged for 280. Round tables with ivory linens, centerpieces that Harlow recognized because she had approved the floral contract herself through the property management team 3 months ago. She wore a dress the color of deep water, no jewelry except her earrings, small, gold, understated. Beckett wore a tuxedo and arrived looking like the occasion had been designed around him. Gerald Wyndham, in his element, moved through the room like a current. He shook every hand, he remembered every name. He had the gift that powerful men sometimes develop, the ability to make each person in the room feel briefly, convincingly, that they were the person he most wanted to talk to. He found Harlow near the bar and greeted her with the particular warmth he reserved for wives of his associates, sincere but slightly distant, the warmth of someone who understood that she was adjacent to the things that mattered rather than central to them. "Harlow." He kissed her cheek. "You look lovely. Beckett tell you about the Moorgrave deal?" "He mentioned it," she said. "Going to be transformative. Absolutely transformative." He was already scanning the room. "This venue, can you believe this room? Every single time I'm in this building, I think, whoever has the sense to own something like this understands what excellence looks like. You know what I've learned in 40 years? You can always tell a person's character by what they build." "I think you're right about that," Harlow said. He moved on. She watched him go. Beckett appeared at her elbow. "You okay?" "Of course," she said. "Why?" He looked at her in the slightly searching way of someone who suspects something without being able to name it. Then he smiled. "You're quiet tonight." "I'm always quiet," she said. "You know that." He laughed, easy, relaxed, the laugh of a man who had no particular reason to be nervous and went to find someone more important to talk to. Harlow picked up her glass. She looked at the room. She looked at the pieces she had approved and the floral arrangement she had signed off on, and the carpet pattern she had selected with the interior to design 2 years ago when they'd done the ballroom renovation. She set her glass down. She walked toward the front of the room. The moment arrived, as moments like this always do, not with a fanfare but with a small mundane thing that nobody meant to say quite so loudly. Gerald Wyndham was making remarks. The Horizon dinner always included brief remarks, 10 minutes, Gerald's version of brevity, and he was in the middle of thanking the venue when he said, as he had said before, as he had said every year for 3 years, the Aldenmore Tower is the finest event space in this city. And I say that as a man who has been in a great many rooms, whoever is at the helm of this operation, whoever is responsible for this level of excellence, that person is someone I would genuinely like to meet. Light laughter. The kind that a room gives to a man who is used to getting it. Harlow was standing near the edge of the room, beside a woman named Claudette Marsh, 55, the CFO of a development company that Aldenmore had acquired 18 months ago, which Claudette knew because she had shaken Harlow's hand at the closing. Claudette leaned toward her and said, very quietly, with the tone of someone genuinely confused about why this wasn't more widely understood. He does know that's your building, right? The room wasn't silent. The room was full of conversation and the sound of crystal and the ambient noise of 280 people in a space that was very good at acoustics. And yet the table nearest to them, 6 people, including Beckett's colleague from Wyndham Capital, a man named Dax Rourke, 44, who had been at the closing dinner when Aldenmore had acquired its first downtown property and had heard Harlow speak for 45 minutes about acquisition strategy. That table went briefly, collectively still. Dax Rourke looked at Harlow. Harlow looked at Gerald. Gerald was still smiling at something someone else had said. Beckett, 2 tables away, had heard Claudette's voice, not the words but the register, and turned. He saw Harlow's face. He saw Dax Rourke's face. He saw the stillness at the nearby table, and his own face did something she had never quite seen it do before. Understanding, she thought, late and wrong-footed and entirely too slow, but finally, understanding. I'm sorry, said a man named Holt Aldrin, 39, a real estate attorney who had represented the seller in 3 of Aldenmore's acquisitions and who was, apparently, under the impression that this was common knowledge. Are you saying Gerald Wyndham doesn't know? He paused. He recalibrated. I'm sorry. I assumed everyone here knew that Harlow runs Aldenmore. The word runs didn't quite cover it, but she was not going to correct him right now. Gerald Wyndham turned. For the first time in the 6 years she had been his daughter-in-law, Harlow watched the older man's face go fully, unguardedly blank. Aldenmore, he said. Not a question. More the way a man says a word when he is checking whether it means what he has always thought it meant. The Aldenmore Group, Dax Rourke confirmed, with the gentle tone of someone diffusing a situation and not entirely succeeding. Harlow founded it. She's been the principal since, 2015? 14, Harlow said. Since 2014, Dax said. Gerald, she owns this building. She's owned it for 4 years, Harlow said. We closed in March. The room, in the particular way that rooms do when they sense the atmosphere, has fundamentally changed, not all at once. In sections. Gerald looked at her. Really looked at her, she thought, maybe for the first time. She watched him reassemble what he understood about the last 6 years and what he had said during those 6 years and what he had said 45 seconds ago, and she watched the arithmetic come out wrong every time he tried it. You own this building, he said. I do, she said. You've owned it for 4 years. Yes. And you never. He stopped, started again. Beckett. Not a question either, more like a name used as a measuring device. Beckett had not moved from where he was standing. He was looking at Harlow with an expression she didn't entirely have a word for. Not quite shame and not quite awe and not quite the careful blankness he usually deployed. Something more unfinished than any of those. She never said, Beckett said, quietly. No, Harlow agreed. I didn't. There was a beat, the kind that lasts 4 seconds but feels like it takes up an entire room. I wanted to be known as a person first, she said. I think most people can understand that, she said it simply. No performance in it, no raised voice, no visible anger, just the plain, clean statement of something true. Claudette, beside her, made a small sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sigh. Dax Rourke said nothing, which was probably wise. Gerald Wyndham said nothing either, which was not something that happened very often. Beckett came to find her near the end of the evening, when the dinner had wound down to the last 40 guests, and the event staff was beginning the quiet, efficient work of clearing the outer tables. He found her on the terrace, off the ballroom, 42 floors above the river. The city was lit up in every direction. It was the kind of view that made people feel small in a way that was either humbling or clarifying, depending on who they were. How long? He said. She didn't answer immediately. She was looking at the river. You mean how long have I owned the building? She said. I mean how long have you known? He stopped. About me. She turned and looked at him. He looked, she searched for the word and found it, diminished. Not small exactly. Beckett Wyndham would never look small, but like something had been taken from him that he had not known he was depending on. Long enough, she said. Harlow, I need you to understand something, she said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this in the way she practiced everything, not by rehearsing words, but by knowing exactly what she meant, and trusting that the words would follow. This isn't a conversation about what you did. That conversation will happen later with our attorneys present, which I think at this point you can probably anticipate. He went very still. What this is, she said, is me telling you that I've never once been who you assumed I was, and that's not your fault entirely. I know I let it happen. But every time your father praised the management of this hotel at his own event, and I sat there and said nothing, I was deciding whether you deserved to know, whether you were the kind of person who had earned that information, and what I was watching for was a reason to say yes. Something that would tell me, this man sees me. This man is curious about who I actually am. She paused. I waited 6 years, she said.
I didn't find it.
Beckett opened his mouth, closed it. When he spoke, his voice was lower than usual, stripped of the ease that was normally so central to him. You should have told me, he said. Maybe, she said, but I needed you to want to know. She left him on the terrace. She took the elevator down to the 35th floor, which held the Aldenmore Group's regional management office, where her operations director, a woman named Phoebe Garland, 42, was still at her desk because Phoebe was always still at her desk. How bad was it? Phoebe said, not looking up. Manageable, Harlow said. Phoebe looked up, studied her. You don't look devastated. I'm not, Harlow said. Do you want to talk about it? Not tonight. She sat down in the chair across from Phoebe's desk, a chair she had sat in so many times it had taken on the specific shape of her particular way of sitting. I want to look at the Riverside figures, and then I want to go over the Dalton Street offer. Phoebe looked at her for another moment. Then she turned back to her screen. Riverside first, she said. It's better news. Harlow nodded. She pulled the file across the desk. She opened it. Outside, 42 stories below, the city moved. The river moved. Somewhere in the ballroom, the event staff was folding the last of the ivory linens, clearing the centerpieces she had approved, restoring the room she owned to the quiet and order it held when no one was using it. The divorce filing went in on a Monday. Rafferty Cole handled it with the same worn-in patience he had shown when she first came to him, adding only that the asset structure was, in his words, unusually favorable to her position, which she had suspected, and which did not surprise her. Gerald Wyndham called her 3 days after the filing. She let it go to voicemail. He said something careful and slightly formal about hoping things could be resolved amicably and that he had always had a great deal of respect for her. She listened to it once. She did not call back. Beckett called her the same day. She answered. I want to try, he said. He sounded like a man who had been awake for 72 hours, which she suspected he had. Whatever it takes, I need you to know I want to try. She considered this. I know you mean that right now, she said. I do, but you didn't want to try when things were easy. You didn't want to try when I was sitting right across from you and you had every chance to see me, and you didn't. Harlow. Beckett. She said his name in a way that stopped him. I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because I've thought about it for a long time and I think you deserve an honest answer. What you wanted was the version of me you decided on. Quiet, undemanding, adjacent. You were comfortable. Comfortable people don't try. A long pause. That's not fair, he said. I know you believe that, she said. I hope you'll think about why. She ended the call. She sat for a moment in the quiet of the office, her floor, her building, and she let herself feel it. Not the vindication, which people always assumed was what you felt at a moment like this. What she actually felt was simpler, more private than that. A kind of settling, like a room after everyone has left it, returning to the shape it always had. She had built this, piece by piece, one decision at a time, through years when no one in Beckett Wyndham's family had thought to ask what she was spending her days doing. She had built it quietly, and she had maintained it, and she had sat in boardrooms across from men who would have treated her differently if they had known, and she had asked herself each time whether that difference would have been earned or merely performed. She had learned, a long time ago, to know the difference. Phoebe knocked twice and opened the door. Dalton Street team is on the line, she said. Put them through, Harlow said. She picked up the phone. She turned to face the window. Below her, the river ran silver in the afternoon light, wide and indifferent and moving the way rivers do in only one direction.